The term poltergeist means noisy ghost, but in modern terms it refers to two distinct phenomena. A noisy ghost is a ghost that has gathered enough energy to interact with our dimension. On the other hand, poltergeist activity usually originates from a living person. For those who can perceive beyond the physical, such as energy readers, communication with these entities is possible, highlighting the importance of maintaining positive energy in one's living space. In a quiet neighborhood in South Shields, England, a family becomes embroiled in a nightmare that defies all logic and rationality. It all began in December 2005, when strange events began to disturb the peace in the home of Mark and Marianne. Paranormal investigator and author Darren Ritson looks back on his involvement in this case, the South Shields poltergeist. 17 years ago, a poltergeist infestation erupted in South Tyneside, northeast England, subsequently becoming one of the most famous cases in UK poltergeist history. The case, which began at the end of 2005 and lasted most of 2006, is said by some to be one of the best attested and most significant cases in over 50 years. When Darren delved into investigating this case, he had no idea of the magnitude of what he will find. These are his words.
There is undoubtedly more to this world than we can presently know, and I can say this with total conviction after investigating this case with Michael J. Hallowell. We witnessed things that most psychic or ghost investigators would wish to see just once during this outbreak. What Mike and I experienced, along with dozens of other baffled onlookers, throughout this intense investigation changed our way of thinking and forced us to realize that reality is certainly not what we believed it to be.
A good example of this paranormal phenomena he and his colleague witnessed it was seeing a child toy appear in the top corner of the room, as if it had materialized out of thin air, only to then suddenly fall to the floor. Some will undoubtedly say it's impossible, but no, he assures that it happened. Another astonishing example of what this poltergeist could achieve was throwing a coin through the air from an empty area of the house, making it pass through a closed glass door and land in an adjoining room. 17 years ago, in June 2006, Darren W. Ritson was approached by a colleague at work who told him, "My friend's daughter has a ghost." After making contact with the family, Darren was able to determine that his friend indeed was genuinely scared by something that, at that time, needed his attention. Over the next month or so, he stayed in touch with Mark and Marianne and offered advice and help whenever they called to tell him about the strange events that had been occurring in their home. Darren asked the family to maybe keep a diary of events, noting down occurrences and keeping a record of who actually witnessed them. Marianne and her partner, Mark, pseudonyms they gave to protect their anonymity, agreed to this and began compiling a day-to-day diary of the poltergeist activities. This will prove invaluable as it would eventually play a big part in uncovering exactly what was happening. One day in July 2006, Darren received a phone call from a very distressed Marianne, informing him that her unwanted guest had been causing absolute havoc inside her home. Objects were being thrown through the air, doors were mysteriously opening and slamming shut by themselves, Horrendous bangs and noises were resonating throughout the house. Taps were turning on by themselves. Her belongings were disappearing from their original places and then reappearing just as mysteriously. And her young son Robert, also a pseudonym, had started seeing people in the house. It was quite obvious that Marianne was now even more terrified and confused, and despite the advice and reassurance Darren had given her previously, she now insisted that he come to the house to see for himself what was happening. Darren agreed without hesitation. This is where Darren's good friend, Mike Hallowell, comes into the story. At that time, Mike was a prominent figure in the Northern English paranormal world and had been actively investigating for over 35 years. Darren had known Mike for a year or so after they both became members of the same local paranormal research society based in Newcastle upon Tyne. Upon arrival, they had a friendly chat with Mark and Marianne, starting to build a trusting relationship with them. And they also reassured them that this was generally happening. They were there to support and help them through it. After the formalities, they got down to business. They interviewed them thoroughly in an effort to discover exactly what was happening in this normal two-story house. While equipment such as motion sensors, video cameras, and tape recorders were set up and positioned immediately in different areas around the place, all the while hoping to see some anomalous phenomena, or better yet, capture it on film. At this point, the strange events had been tormenting Lock Street for almost 6 months, starting in December of the previous year, 2005, and slowly increasing in intensity over time to its present level. So his colleague was inclined to think that if this was indeed a genuine poltergeist infestation, it could be rapidly approaching to end of its lifespan. Most poltergeists tend to be short-lived, with visitations or infestation lasting from 2 weeks to 2 months, and each respective poltergeist comes with different levels of intensity. Mike and his colleague were amazed to witness their first paranormal events at number 42 Lock Street. They were standing in Robert's room, Mark and Marianne's son, when suddenly and out of nowhere came a yellow plastic nut that was a part of Robert's workbench and toolkit. It flew across the room so quickly and forcefully that it bounced off a wooden cupboard door before hitting Marianne in the back. As she screamed in surprise and in pain, they could do nothing but stand there completely bewildered. While they were discussing this event, another one of Robert's toys slid from the top of the dresser and landed in the metal wastebasket with a clang. Although Mark was nearby, they could clearly see that he was not responsible for this. Mark also jumped in shock, and from the expressions on both Mark and Marianne's faces, they quickly began to suspect that something truly strange was happening in the house. The South Shield poltergeist was in action. A bottle balancing on its edge was discovered by Mike after he had dozed off for a short period of time during the night while sitting at the table keeping watch. An attempt to push it with his finger failed as the bottle remained upright. A second attempt shortly after succeeded in making it fall, as seen in the film footage. These were not the only incidents that occurred during their first visit to Lock Street. Sound recordings were also made that afternoon in Robert's room after a designated period of lockup, which consisted of creaks and thuds, a strange pinging sound, a dragging noise that they could not only describe as footsteps or movement of some kind, the sound of guitar strings being played, coins spinning on a wooden surface, coughing, and a very strange bloop 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 noise. They had no idea what that was. Very strange to say the least, as they knew for certain that the room was empty throughout this period. They were all sitting downstairs in the kitchen. Things were heating up, and this was only their day one. They had no idea how bad things were going to get. Now it was becoming extremely violent, and they knew that this thing intended to cause physical harm in any way possible. It had even started throwing kitchen knives at people. On one occasion, a large silver kitchen knife was found on Robert's bedroom floor, and it certainly wasn't there previously. On another occasion, when Mike entered the house, a knife was thrown across the kitchen, bounced off the TV and stopped by a shelf before falling to the floor. One day, Marianne contacted Mike, distressed to explain what was happening. While speaking on the phone expressing her concerns about the poltergeist following her to her mother's house, she received a text message that read, "Please don't go. I'll come with you, bitch." Now frantic, she screamed over the phone to Mike, "Oh my God, I'm going to be scared to sleep tonight." To which the poltergeist immediately responded with another message saying, "I can get you when you are awake, and I will comfort you when you are asleep, bitch." It was as if the poltergeist was listening to the conversation. An exhausting, unpleasant, and malevolent encounter with an unknown and vicious force had finally ended, and Mark, Marianne, and Robert were able to start living a normal life once again. The South Shield Poltergeist is a true and chilling account of a family's struggle against an invisible intruder, and it's a case that they will never forget. This case, meticulously documented and analyzed by experts in the paranormal field, has been compared to the famous Enfield poltergeist of the 1970s, and has become one of the most striking and well-documented cases in the history of poltergeist phenomena. The story of the South Shield Poltergeist is a chilling reminder that there are forces in this world that go beyond our understanding, and that sometimes evil can manifest in ways that defy all logical explanation. A tale that invites us to reflect on the limits of our understanding and to stay vigilant in the face of the unknown. If you found this story interesting and captivating, I invite you to share it with your friends and family. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Give it a thumbs up and activate the notification bell to stay updated. This is Epic Screams, wishing you a good night.